Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, if you will please read the prepared statement and call the roll.
October 9, 2018. Please be advised, this meeting is being taped for audio and video broadcast. The meeting will also be closed captioned. It's important that everyone speak clearly into the microphones and only one person speak at a time. Assisted listening devices are available. Mr. Burnett.
Present.
Mr. Corsello.
Here.
Mr. Sacchinelli.
Here.
Ms. Smith. Here. Mr. Stern.
Here.
Ms. Melendez.
Here.
Mr. Ioannidis.
Here.
Mr. Dumas. Mr. Sims. Mr. Kites.
Here.
Ms. Siegelbaum. Mr. Hempstead.
Here.
Mr. Sirenides.
Here.
Mr. Igneri.
Here.
Mr. Livingston.
Here.
12 present.
12 present, we have a quorum. Next item on the agenda is the acceptance of the minutes of the regular meeting of September 11th, 2018. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Igneri moves. Any corrections, deletions, omissions, additions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? One abstention. Next item on the agenda, public participation.
Steve Bartush.
Thank you. Steve Bartush, Shellfish Commission. So I'm here standing in opposition to authorizing His Honor to sign the Army Corps of Engineers Eversource 408 permitting. And I have essentially 3 points that I'd like to present. First, that the cart is way before the horse, environmentally speaking. There's been no local environmental review to date, and frankly, this is in contrast to other parts of the Walk Bridge project, where the DOT has been forthcoming with information to the Norwalk Shellfish Commission and Harbor Management Commission, including their wildlife biologists. So I'm not so sure why, at this point, we would want to circumvent the advisory capabilities that we have, including our own biologists on staff, if you will, with the Harbor Management Commission and the Shellfish Commission. Second point, I think we should protect the future boating facility as a shellfishing resource. And I say future, 50 years hence, whatever agreement is made with Eversource today, Eversource as an entity will likely not exist in 50 years. And there'll be a different return address on our electric bills, and they may not be interested in honoring any agreement made here. So perhaps it's best to find a different route. With respect to Eversource, we were promised some alternative route presentations. Some we have seen, at least from engineering. Frankly, I think the overhead line presentations were somewhat of a red herring, and that other underground routes that the Shellfish Commission supports to this point remain unexplored. In the July meeting that we had, where the DPW and His Honor was present, there were a number of selection criteria that were listed by Eversource, one of which was their cost. And I'm sure that making different HDD drilling angles is more expensive to find a different route, but I'm not so sure why Norwalk would care about that. So as I feel this project is ill-advised, I would urge the council to kindly send this back to committee. And I thank Chairman Igneri for his commentary with respect to providing more open communication going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bartosh.
John Pinto?
No, thank you very much. I'm John Pinto. I'm with the Norwalk Harbor Management Commission. I'm the chairman of the Application Review Committee, who reviews all the applications that come into the city from DOT, from private sources, and we are certainly concerned right now, and our main thrust, and I hope everyone has received the letter that the Commission and the Shellfish Commission and the Harbor Management Commission has presented to this council with regard to not going forward with signing this letter prematurely. And I'd like to certainly reiterate what Mr. Bartosh has mentioned with regard to those plans, and that we certainly have not seen adequately the plans that Eversource proposes to place these transmission lines under the visitor's dock. And I think, as I said, it's premature right now. We're seriously concerned about the devaluing of our property. That's the main concern, because once those lines go in, until I get certain certification, or that we're not going to be able to do what we would like to do in the future. We don't know what we want to do in the future. If this is going to be our communication hub, our transportation hub, for boats coming in and around the city, for vicinity, the train and other public places, that boating dock, we don't know what we want to plan in the future, and that would certainly limit what we would do with those two tension wires going underneath the visitor's dock. Now, I understand that they're going below the pilings, but we've had problems in the past with regard to those pilings ripping off, with different sized vessels going attached to that dock. We don't know what would happen in the future, again, as far as how far we might need to drill, and we might be limited with regard to our capacity. And why do that? They mentioned to us that we would not be able to take 90-degree turns and cuts. That's not completely the case, as we've got a leading expert in the field that have addressed those issues, that several other communities have 90-degree turns with those types of cables. Those 115 kilovolt cables can make 90-degree turns, or splices, as you will. We can avoid the visitor's dock. We're not adverse to going underneath the dock. Underneath the harbor. Underneath the harbor certainly seems to be the best route, but I think there are alternative routes that we can take, perhaps south of the dock. As I said, we are limited in where we can dredge, number one, by the DEP's rules and regulations as far as dredging that harbor, and how deep we can go. And clearly, we would need to certainly add to the depth of our visitor's dock in order to accommodate larger vessels in the near future. And certainly, as those cables do come up, they're going to come up close to where we would need to dredge behind the docks. So, as I said, I hope that we would have a chance to discuss this issue with Eversource in greater detail, and hope that the Commission will, again, meet at a future date to discuss this quickly, because, as I said, we would like to see the project move forward. We're not obstructionists in this project, but I think we clearly need to review this issue very carefully.
Thank you, Dr. Pinto.
Evan Piacenti?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Chairman Igneri, and other members of the Common Council. My name is Evan Piacenti, and I am the Eversource Project Manager for the Norwalk Bridge Transmission Line Relocation Project. In order to replace the Walk Bridge, the Connecticut Department of Transportation has asked Eversource to relocate its two 115 kV transmission lines from the existing Walk Bridge. The relocation and energization of these lines must be completed prior to dismantling the bridge. For the past 2 years, Eversource has worked with the mayor, senior city staff, several other stakeholders, CDOT, and we feel that we've developed a route that meets all the following criteria: electrical reliability standards, limits environmental and community impacts, as well as a project that's at a reasonable cost. Based on that input, we believe that our current proposed routing between Norwalk Police Department to the Fort Point Street Bridge is the best possible route to meet the criteria previously stated. After 2 years of review, we need to move forward with siting and permitting activities for the project. The transmission lines cannot be relocated and energized prior to DOT mobilizing. Obtaining the letter of no objection is a key component of Eversource entering into the next phase of the project. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you.
Dick Harris.
Good evening. I do water quality work for Norman Bloom, and I'd just like to put our 2 cents in about the whole project. What we're concerned about is any project that has to dig over by that bridge. And the cable, the way it's set up now, I can't argue with where it's going, but if we have to dig, the sediments are full of a lot of compounds, heavy metals, and there is at least one benzene compound down there, and if you get into it, it's going to require hazmat suits, special handling, special truckling, and special processing. It's going to cost a fortune, and how's that going to look? There's a possibility of that. Their own core values show it. So I'm saying, look, the pipeline, the way it's presently proposed, I've seen one just completed over in Westport for the Saugatuck Bridge. No problem. There were no issues. There was no dirt, there was no silt, there was nothing in the water. And I'm for it. The way it stands right now, it's 50 feet below. It's 10 feet below the last piling, 50 feet below, and an 8-foot offset. If there's a different route, fine, but so far it hasn't been there. But we are opposed to any digging. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harris.
Deb Goldstein.
Thank you. I'm here to address 2 items on the agenda very, very quickly. Item 7H1, which is the approval of the contract with Harriman regarding the TOD study for the East Norwalk train station. I was on the Oversight Committee. I encouraged the Common Council to go ahead with the revote and reauthorize this as they did in September. I understand it's a technical correction to the resolution, but the Oversight Committee does support this. With regard to item 7F4, the Army Corps Engineer no objection letter on the Section 408 permit. If this item is on consent, I'd ask that someone please move it off for discussion. Those of us who attended the Public Works Committee meeting last week note this item was tabled and would therefore like to have the committee members address for the rest of the council, where we can hear the discussion, whether this item was moved to the council at the discretion of the chairman, whether any of the misinformation provided at that meeting has since been corrected, and by whom, whether any of the non-Public Works Committee members fully understand the objections of the Norwalk Harbor Management Commission, the Norwalk Shellfish Commission, and the 3rd Taxing District, including the environmental implications and the implications for the docks, the park, and the shellfish beds. And that the city is prioritizing the impacts to 2 privately owned development sites over the public commons, like the park, the docks, and the shellfish. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Goldstein. Is there another sheet over there? No. That is all that have signed up to address the council. Now we go into resignations and appointments. We have 2 resignations. No, it's over here. We have 2 resignations. One, Kelly Straniti has resigned as an alternate to the Zoning Commission, and Joe Pissarro has resigned as a Zoning Commission regular member. Moving on to appointments, I'm putting forward the name Kelly Straniti to move from alternate up to Zoning Commission regular. Do I have a motion?
I'd like to move.
Mr. Burnett.
I had initially brought forward Kelly's name in support of going on to the commission as an alternate, and I'm proud to bring forward as a regular at this time. Kelly is a former council member, a local business owner, and very much aware and involved in the city of Norwalk, and I think she would be a great addition to the Zoning Commission.
Thank you. Mr. Hempstead.
Having met Kelly in 2003 and running for office with her, then serving with Kelly, I know for sure the fact that Kelly, once engaged, is very engaged, is committed to the future of Norwalk. She's born and raised here. Her son still lives here, born and raised. She's still active in the community, still active with other functions, and when she digs in, she does an excellent, thorough job in analyzing anything. I think as an alternate, even though short span, she's been to every meeting, so I know her commitment to Norwalk is number one in her view of our great city.
Thank you. Further discussion? I agree. I've known Kelly for quite some time. In my previous life as police chief, very active in the community, and again, has attended every meeting as a zoning alternate, and I think she'll be really good as a regular, and I'm glad she decided that she would accept. So seeing no further discussions, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? So carries unanimously. Congratulations. We also have reappointments. Joseph A. Kramer, Pension Board. Do I have a motion?
So here,
Mr. Igneri.
I'm pleased to make a motion to reappoint Mr. Kramer. Joe has served on the Norwalk Pension Board for nearly 10 years. During that time, Norwalk has expanded the duties of the Pension Board to include the investments for OPEB, other post-employment benefits funds, and overseeing the investment funds that individuals can select in their defined contribution retirement plan. Mr. Kramer's investment knowledge of markets has been a great help for the Pension Board in selecting investment advisors. He knows the questions to ask based on his understanding of financial products and is willing to challenge fund representatives on their performance. We are fortunate to have such a knowledgeable Norwalk native available to serve another term.
Thank you. Further discussion? Mr. Porcello.
I note on Mr. Kramer's resume that he got some of his education at Brigham High School from 1971 through 1975. When I first became acquainted with Mr. Kramer, and even back
Speak into
then
the
he was,
microphone.
Into the mic.
and even back then he was intelligent, practical, hard worker. We're lucky to have him on the pension board, willing to do this again.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Carries unanimously. Congratulations. Thank you for your continued service. Next reappointment, Carol Frank to the Fair Housing Advisory Commission. Do I have a motion? Mr. Hempstead.
So moved, Mr. Mayor, and I know Carol has been involved for quite some time with this commission and has been very engaged with it, and I know she'll do a good job, as she always has in the past.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? So carries unanimously. I don't see Carol here.
No, she's not coming.
She's not coming. There's a reappointment to the Fair Housing Advisory Commission. Alan Mathis. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move
Mr. Burnett.
reappointment. Mr. Mathis is presently on the commission, and his professional history shows that he's been a leader in providing services to those that are in great need. And his expertise will be of great value as he continues on this commission. So I'd like to support his reappointment.
Thank you, Mr. Burnett. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Abstention? Carries unanimously. I don't see Mr. Mathis here either. But if we could have Mr. Needy and Mr. Kramer come down to be administered their oath of office. You've done this before.
Yes, we have.
And so have you, Joe.
And I should have your form. You, Kelly Eisternedy, having been appointed as regular member of the Zoning Commission of the City of Norwalk, do solemnly swear or affirm that you will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of said office according to your best skill and judgment, so help you God, or upon the pains and penalties of perjury.
I do.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Oh, it's L, okay.
You can keep one, and Here.
And,
Wow.
okay, Joseph, is it? Yeah, you can keep that one. Okay, all right.
And she has to sign the other one.
I don't have the, oh, there it is. Okay. You sign this one and I'll take care of this. Mr. Kramer. You, Joseph A. Kramer, having been reappointed as a member of the Pension Board of the City of Norwalk, do solemnly swear or affirm that you will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of said office according to your best skill and judgment, so help you God, or upon the pains and penalties of perjury. Congratulations. If you'll sign both.
So sign both of them, and you'll get one back.
You date that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Congratulations, sir.
Under Mayor's remarks, as you know, this past weekend, we had the first, if not the first ever, the first in a very, very long time, the Columbus Day Parade, which started at Eagles on Mott Avenue and proceeded to the Heritage Wall on West Avenue, where we had a wonderful ceremony recognizing the Italians' heritage in the city of Norwalk and the wonderful things that they brought with them when they immigrated to this country. Also, this is the flu season, and we are having the Norwalk Health Department is going to be having a flu clinic this Thursday, and other flu clinics planned. So if you want to get online and find a time when you can conveniently go to get your flu shot, it's highly recommended. As you may or may not know, last year more than 80,000 people died from the flu. So it's very, very important for everybody, especially those who are most vulnerable, to go and get their flu shot so that we can make sure that we're all protected. I also have a proclamation here that I'll read. The Norwalk's Lightfoot Running Club. I think somebody's here from the club.
There's a few, aren't they?
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, you guys can stand or come down. Wow. Once this is over, we're going to empty out here. So, Norwalk's Lightfoot Running Club. Whereas the year 2018 is the 41st consecutive year during which the Lightfoot Running Club, in coordination with the Norwalk Recreation and Parks Department, has organized and conducted a series of running races known collectively as the Norwalk Summer Series. And whereas each year the Norwalk Summer Series 3-mile, 5-mile, 7-mile, 9-mile, 11-mile, and half marathon races, along with the Mother's Day 10K race, are enjoyed by hundreds of local and visiting runners of all ages, abilities, and backgrounds. And whereas the participants, organizers, and volunteers of the Norwalk Summer Series demonstrate a spirit of fellowship, mutual respect, and encouragement emblematic of our city and beneficial to the quality of life in Norwalk. And whereas the Lightfoot Running Club's many dedicated, community-minded volunteers contribute substantial time and effort to prepare for, support, and conduct each race in the Norwalk Summer Series for the benefit of all participants, and whereas Donald Capone has served as the volunteer race director for the Norwalk Summer Series since 2003 and has given an extraordinary amount of time, energy, and devotion to this endeavor without seeking any personal acclaim or compensation. You want to serve on a committee or a board? Now, therefore, I, Harry W. Rilling, Mayor of the City of Norwalk, do hereby congratulate Norwalk's Lightfoot Running Club, and in doing so, call upon the citizens of the City of Norwalk to join me in recognizing the exceptional community service provided by the volunteers of the Lightfoot Running Club, including race director Donald Capone, and commend them for their continued contributions to our city and for being an example to everyone who would strive to make our community better. In witness whereof, I have set my hand and caused the seal of the city of Norwalk to be affixed this 9th day of October, 2018. Congratulations. Mr. Akides.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I pass this on to Ms. Eloisa Melendez, who's been tasked with reading the consent calendar tonight, I just like to say quickly that if you hear your item read, that means your item has been approved and you're no longer required to stay, but you may if you choose so. So, Ms. Melendez, do you mind reading the consent calendar, please?
I do mind, but
Let's do that.
okay. Starting with Recreation, Parks, and Cultural Affairs Committee, item 7A1. Authorize the Mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to enter into an agreement with the Human Services Council for their use of Taylor Farm for the Kids Fest Touch a Truck and more to be held Saturday, October 27th, 2018, from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., with setup to begin Friday, October 26, 2018 at 12 noon, with teardown no later than 5 p.m. on Sunday, October 28, 2018, estimated attendance 500. Item 7A, 2, authorize the Mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to enter into an agreement with Landtech Consultants, Inc. for the design services for project number 3860, West Rocks Middle School Athletic Field Design Services for a sum not to exceed $80,000. The account number is noted. Item 7A, 3, authorize the Mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to enter into an agreement with NHS MBI, Inc. for their use of Norwalk High School field / parking lot for their NHS Marching Band and Guard Cavalcade to be held October 20th, 2018 from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. with the setup to begin 9 a.m. and tear down no later than 10 p.m. Estimated attendance 1,000 staggered. Item 7A4, authorize the Mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to enter into a contract with Pat Corsetti, Inc. for the installation of a new playground at Fodor Farm for a sum not to exceed $20,725. The account number is noted. 7B1, under the Ordinance Committee, approve proposed revisions to Chapter 12, Alcoholic Beverages, Article 1, Section 12-1. Item 7C1, under Finance Committee, accept and approve the report of the Claims Committee dated September 13th, 2018. Item 7C2, for informational purposes only, narrative on the tax collections dated September 13th, 2018. Item 7C3, for informational purposes only, monthly tax collectors report dated August 31st, 2018. Item 7C4, authorize a purchasing agent to issue a purchase order to Crawley Ford LLC for the purchase of two 2018 Ford Escapes 4x2 SUV for a sum not to exceed $48,300.60. State of Connecticut contract number noted, and then our account number is also noted. The items under the Personnel Committee are off consent. I just want to note that because there's a change made on the floor there. 7, under Health, Welfare, and Public Safety, 7E1A, authorize the purchasing agent to execute a purchase order on behalf of the Norwalk Police Department to Motorola Solutions, Inc., pricing per State of Connecticut master contract numbers noted for the purchase of, the numbers of the portable radios, chargers, batteries, and accessories not to exceed $1,228,136. The account number is noted. 7E1B, authorize the purchasing agent to execute orders not to exceed $12,000. The account number is noted. 7E2A, authorize the Mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute an agreement with Motorola Solutions, Inc. for the supply and installation of equipment to enhance the police and fire radio systems, pricing as per State of Connecticut master contract, numbers noted for an amount not to exceed $316,558.88. $220,000 from the account, which is numbers noted, and the remainder from a different account, which numbers also are noted. Item 7E2B, authorize the chief, Thomas Kaholic, to execute change order to the above agreement for the total amount not to exceed $31,600, with account numbers noted, two different account numbers. Item 7E3B, authorize 3A, sorry about that. Authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute an agreement with low bidder security specialists for supply and installation of security camera and network equipment terms and conditions as per bid number 3850 for an amount not to exceed $25,388.56. The account number is noted. Item 7E3B, authorize Chief Thomas Kaholic to execute change orders to the above agreement for the total amount not to exceed $2,500. The account number is noted. Item 7E4, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute any and all documents necessary to apply for and accept grant funds from the state of Connecticut under the body worn recording equipment reimbursement grant in the amount of $204,488. Item 7E5, authorize the purchasing agent to execute a purchase order to the low bidder, Fleet Auto Supply LLC, for the purchase and installation of emergency equipment and fit up on 7 police interceptors under project number 3768, not to exceed $93,815.33. Account numbers noted. Authorize the purchasing agent to execute purchase order MHQ to MHQ and Inc. for purchase of 7 2018 Ford Police Interceptors under the Connecticut State contract, pricing number noted, not to exceed $199,311. Account numbers noted. Item E7A, 7E7A, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute any and all documents necessary to apply for and accept grant funds from Yale New Haven Health System Corp. in the amount of $75,217 for the period beginning July 1st, 2018 through June 30th, 2019 for public health emergency preparedness. Item 7E7B, authorize Mayor Harry W. Rilling to execute any and all agreements, documents, instruments, or amendments as may be necessary to implement the public health emergency preparedness grant for the period beginning July 1st, 2018 through June 30th, 2019. Item 7EAA, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute any and all documents necessary to apply for and accept grant funds for Optimus Health, Inc. for contract period October 1st, 2018 through September 30th, 2019 for the WIC program. Item 7EAB, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute any and all documents, instruments, or amendments as may be necessary to implement the WIC program for the period October 1st, 2018 through September 30th, 2019. Item 7F1, under the Public Works Committee, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute a third amendment to the June 5th, 2017 contract with T and Bond, Inc. to provide professional engineering services relative to investigating deficiencies and options for the portion of the Norwalk levee located south of the Perry Avenue Bridge adjacent to the Norwalk River for a sum not to exceed $8,000 for additional survey information to confirm the crest evaluation as requested by USACOE as part of their 2018 routine inspection. Account numbers noted. Item 7F2, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute a second supplemental agreement between the city of Norwalk and AECOM for extra engineering services required in conjunction with the rehabilitation of the James Street Bridge over the Silvermine River, Connecticut DOT Project 102-320 for an amount not to exceed $37,290. The federal share of 80% and city of 20. The account numbers are noted. Item 7F3, authorize the purchasing agent to issue a purchase order to Gabrielli Truck Sales of Connecticut, should have been LLC, for the purchase of one 2020 Mack plow truck for a sum not to exceed $231,864. Under Land Use and Building Management Committee, item 7G1, resolve that the Norwalk Facilities Construction Commission is hereby established as the building committee with regard to the PCB abatement of the wood doors and wood paneling at Norwalk High School. Resolved that the Norwalk Common Council hereby authorizes at least the preparation of schematic drawings and outline specifications for the PCB abatement of the wood doors and wood paneling at Norwalk High School. Resolved that the City of Norwalk Common Council authorizes the City of Norwalk Board of Education to apply to the Commissioner of Administrative Services and to accept or reject a grant for the PCB abatement of the wood doors and wood panelings at Norwalk High School. Item 7G2, authorize the Mayor, Harry W. Railing, to execute an amendment to Construction Solutions Group, LLC, contract for program management services for school construction projects to allocate portions of their fees as follows. New Columbus School at the Ely site, $338,640, account numbers noted. Ponus Ridge Middle School renovation and additional project, $338,640, account numbers noted. Item 7G3, authorize the Office of Building Management to issue change orders on Deering Construction, Inc. contract for the Roosevelt Center parking lot improvement project for an additional amount not to exceed $41,203, which is revised total contingency amount of $70,000, account numbers noted. Item 7G4A, authorize the Mayor, Harry W. Railing, to execute an agreement with Integrated Building Services for the Norwalk Main Library window leak remediation project for a total not to exceed $45,000. Funds are available from the account number that's noted. Item 7G4B, authorize the Office of Building Management to issue change orders on the contract for a total not to exceed $4,500. Item 7H1, under the Planning Committee, authorize the Mayor, Harry W. Railing, to execute an agreement with Harriman Associates, Inc. to conduct a transit-oriented development study at the East Norwalk Railroad Station in the amount not to exceed $125,000 pursuant to a $125,000 grant received from the CTOPM through the 2017 Responsible Growth and Transit-Oriented Development Program. And finally, the item 7H2, authorize the Mayor, Harry W. Railing, to sign the mayoral certification and approve the advancement of the PY43 caper to HUD. That's it.
Very well done, Ms. Meleza.
Wow.
I thought that she does it again.
Yeah, that sure was a mouthful.
Can you repeat that?
Yes. Before I call for a vote, I just wanted to say recently these meetings have been posted through the city's website on Facebook. So we've brought in the amount of people and who are able to see these meetings. And we're often asked, I've been often asked that you're reading all these items and there's not much of a discussion. And just to clarify for those watching this at home on their devices or wherever, that every item that you've just heard read on the consent calendar has been vetted through the various council committees that are composed of council members. And after following that we go through the agenda at a caucus meeting where it's discussed again thoroughly. So just a little background on the process on which the city goes through. That being said, if there are no objections to the consent calendar, I will now call for a vote. Seeing no objections, I will now call for a vote. All in favor, please raise your hand to signify yes. Mr. Sims?
No, I'm going to vote against it.
Okay. Abstentions? No. Let the record show Mr. Sims has voted no. Mr. Sims, are you voting against the entire consent calendar or any item in particular?
No, I was going to make that point. I'm voting against two items, which is 7F4, as I don't believe that we should be running lines underneath the...
That wasn't on consent.
That's off consent.
Was that all consent? Then I apologize. And item 7G2, with appropriation of the $338,640 $1,640 for the new Columbus School at Ely.
Mr. Sims, would you like to take that item off consent and then have the opportunity to vote no for that item specifically?
Sure.
What's he taking off?
7G2.
To the Columbus and Pepperoni stores. All right, so let the record show that item 7G2 is off the consent calendar. So just to be safe, I'll call for a new vote. All in favor of the consent calendar as amended? It looks to be unanimous. Back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Kites. Okay, let's go to item 7D1, Ms. Smith.
Yes, Sharon Connors is here tonight, so I wanted to introduce her and forth her name for approval and vote as our new purchasing agent. Oh, wait.
That's been moved by Ms. Smith. Further comments? Discussion? Mr. Igneri.
I'd just like to say something. I was just waiting for the people to leave. Yeah, so Sharon is replacing Ben Luce as purchasing agent. Ben has returned to Lockheed Martin, and she has been working in our purchasing department for 2 years now at a high-level position. And you've got 26 years with GE Capital. It's a long time and great on your resume. 15 years in the procurement department. So I think you'll be a really great purchasing agent.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure for the past actually almost 2.5 years now, and I look forward to the additional responsibilities of being the purchasing agent. As you can see, our department's been quite busy, and there'll be a lot more projects forthcoming. So I look forward to working with all of you. Thank you again.
I think Mr. Igneri and then Mr. Kites.
I was just going to say that over the last 2 years, I've had an opportunity to work with Sharon, and she shows a quick grasp of the situation and an understanding of the project, and is very good in getting it done. Welcome aboard, official.
Thank you.
Mr. Kites.
Yes, I'd also like to echo Mr. Igneri's comments. We've worked together several times in the past, and we're very lucky to have you. We worked together in your previous capacity with the City Hall, and people don't understand how vital the purchasing department is. Pretty much, if we didn't have you, everything would just grind to a halt in many different ways. So, thank you.
Keep that up. I'm going to have to give her a raise. Further discussion. I too would like to commend Sharon for the work she's done for the purchasing department. You know, we had a person in charge of the purchasing department, and Sharon came in as an assistant and has stepped right up and hit the ground running and has done a tremendous job, and I appreciate that. I know that Mr. Barron has spoke very highly of Sharon, and we are thrilled to have you considered as the head of the department. So again, unless there's going to be an abstention or a negative vote, welcome aboard. Seeing no further comments, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Carries unanimously. Congratulations. Okay. Now we go to hold on one second. Okay, item 7 F4. Mr. Igneri.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will read the motion, and then I would like to say a few comments.
Okay.
Make a motion to authorize the Mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to send a letter on behalf of the City of Norwalk indicating no objection to Eversource's Army Corps of Engineers Section 408 permit application for relocation of their 115 kV transmission lines under the Norwalk River related to the Walk Bridge Replacement CT dot project 301-0176.
Mr. Igneri.
I just wanted to add a couple of things. A, yes, as chairman, I moved this to the council tonight. I did it with the knowledge of the DPW committee members, and we've had lots of exchanges or in exchange with Eversource and getting answers to some of the questions asked. I just want to add that the DOT, Eversource, Planning and Zoning, the Mayor's Office, DPW, and Parks have been discussing this and looking at options for 2 years, as was noted earlier. Eversource has been responsive and has worked to come up with a route that meets the concerns raised by city departments. The current proposed route has been deemed by all these city departments as the least disruptive alternative. Eversource must submit its application by November 1st, I believe, in order to start the process for the Army Corps and the DEP to begin their analysis. If we miss that window, I think they will have no choice but to go overhead. In short, I fully support this motion. Putting wires underground is the only way to go, as everyone seems to have admitted. And approving the Eversource moving forward with the filing with DEP does not limit future development of our docks, since there are no easements and restrictions. These installing new pilings in the docks, this would be the same precaution you would take if you were putting up a deck on your property. You'd have someone come in and make sure there were no gas lines or electric lines or water lines before putting in a footing to hold your deck up. Also, I don't think there will be any interference with future development. Lastly, environmental concerns will be addressed by Connecticut Deep during the application period, which can take over a year. Based on personal experience with Deep, they will be exacting and demanding in their quest to protect our environment. So with that said, I now would like to call up Lisa Burns, our senior engineer, to say a few words about this project.
Good evening. I was asked to prepare a brief PowerPoint presentation summarizing the joint Public Works and Parks Committee meeting that occurred last week. So if you just give me a moment, I will try to pull it up on the screen. It's just highlights.
You need help from inside?
I think I'm okay.
Yep.
Okay. I'm not the AV specialist. Thank you, John. I'm Lisa Burns. I'm the principal engineer for the city of Norwalk. I've been with the city for 14 years. And the last 3 years, I've been the principal engineer. More technical stuff here.
It worked earlier.
Okay. Hopefully it should.
The screen is probably just a little dirty.
Okay. All right. I don't know what you all can. Is this the only one that's working?
Yeah, it's only one.
When I tested this before, it was working on all screens. Is this going to be sufficient, or do I need the gentleman in the
Well, you
to
lost
help
that.
me out?
You lost that screen. Well, why do we start, Lisa?
Sure.
Without the benefit of the charts?
It'd be easier with some of the visuals, but I'll soldier on here. So way back in spring of 2016, the routing of the Eversource, sorry, let's just start at the top of my first slide. The high towers that you all know that are around the walk bridge, the historic kind of iron high towers, need to be removed in order to facilitate construction of the walk bridge. You can't swing a crane around to build the bridge with those high towers in the way. And on the high towers are two 115 kV lines that serve all of 3rd Taxing District and some of southwestern Connecticut. They also, on those high towers and catenary lines, have the signals for the Metro North Railroad and their communication lines. Back in August of 2018, the relocation underground, the HDD version, the horizontal directional drill, was approved by the council to submit a letter of no objection. The mayor submitted a letter of no objection to the Army Corps to advance the DOT for the Metro North Line's relocation, as well as an open cut that they were going to do for permanent temporary lines on the north side of the Straffolino Bridge. Both Metro North and the DOT, Metro North and Eversource need to be off the high towers by 2020 to facilitate the walk bridge construction schedule. And to do that, there's a myriad of environmental permits, that are required. One of the things that the joint, actually the Public Works Committee asked for in contemplating this motion at last week's committee meeting was, could we have more information on the environmental permitting requirements? There was a memo provided Friday, prepared by Sue Prosey, our program manager for the walk bridge. I believe that was circulated to all of the council members. Hard copies, I think, were left at your stations that outline the extensive environmental permitting process that needs to go through, whether it be through the DEP, the Connecticut Siting Council, the Army Corps. So if there's any specific questions related to permitting, we can chat with Mario or Sue Prosey about that. In addition, at your station, to again advance this item, there was some questions asked of Eversource about easements and maintenance on the lines, any potential working restrictions that would be imposed on the city if it contemplated doing anything with anything around the lines. And that was also addressed in the memo that Eversource provided to Mario on Friday. For those who don't have the background on, the history, so back in the spring of 2016, the DOT took it upon themselves to look at routing options for the city, and there were 7 different options presented to the city over the summer. The ones shown here, this is 4 of the options. Anything with dots are overhead and aerial. Anything without the dots are underground. There were options 5 through 7. I won't belabor going through all these options. One of the options that's been discussed about why can't we go north of the Straffolino Bridge? Why can't we do something outside of Betts Park? Well, that was one of the original options contemplated. That's that purple line here. And to go underground, basically through what was Coastwise Marina, would come up right by Ironworks, and that would basically have taken the back of the Ironworks building off where you drive through to, I think, go into the garage. Because you can't just rise back up underground and go up 200 feet without having some transition structures. So nothing on the north side of the Straffolino Bridge was not going to have negative impacts on existing private properties and businesses. So from 2016, from spring of 2016, the city, especially through the mayor's development team at the time, approached Eversource directly and asked for alternatives to what the DOT proposed. And we stressed that the city wanted really no adverse impacts on almost anything we could have it, on parkland, on commuters, on private development, and really, in today's day and age, everyone agreed that going underground was the best option. Even from resiliency, it is more expensive than going aerial, but as far as impacting property values and things like that, it was going to have the least negative impact. So all of those factors were taken into consideration, and many stakeholders were considered when coming up with routing options. The first routing option, it takes quite a while to develop a routing option. You have to do borings and test piles and look at all sorts of things to see if it's even feasible. So from August of 2017, when there was a briefing of the administration and the council chair people and departments about the proposed alignment, which is a little bit almost identical to what we see today. From that point, from August of 2017 until the spring, about April of this year, Eversource went back and did their due diligence, test pitting and everything to look at how to best lay out the proposed route. And then other stakeholders brought up concerns about the proposed route. So we went back to Eversource and took that feedback and asked them to, again, look at additional considerations, additional routes, and in doing that, we came up, Eversource came up with the final route, which I have dated here, July of 2018. And the final route that is, it's not really before this body. What's before this body is authorizing the mayor to send a letter of no objection for Eversource to submit their application to the Army Corps. This is what the Army Corps would be analyzing. 25 Van Zant is here. It would be Windbaum's property. It would come off. Right now, the transmission lines follow the main line of the train, the main line of the New Haven line. They would come off of the poles that are there now and go underground down Seaview Avenue, hugging as closely as possible to the State of Connecticut 136 right-of-way, coming into Betts Park. So this would be regular dig a trench and put in pipes with conduits running through it. And then when it gets to here, there would be there'd be a couple pits, and the pipes under the river would be horizontally, directionally drilled under the river and come up between 70 and 90 Water Street. 70 and 90, 70 is what's known as DiNardo's property right now, and 90 is Spinnaker's property. So the receiving pits would be right between the two property lines so that those properties could be returned to the development role at the conclusion of the project. And then the line would continue underground down Elizabeth Street, through the police station parking lot, and rise back up onto the main line behind the police station parking lot. This here is mean high water level, mean low water level, and the channel bottom. Between the channel bottom and where this pipe would be is about 30 feet below the bottom of the channel. So what would that mean to the docks at Betts Park? These would be the 2-3 foot diameter conduits that would have the high tower wires in them. This is about 9 feet away and 8 feet below, and I'm really about a 12-foot offset from the bottom of those piers. These piers are about 40 feet long. And initially, back in the scenario that was seen in spring of 2018, initially Eversource had the two conduit pipes located between the piles in responding to concerns about not impacting Betts Park dock the city went back and asked Eversource to consider going deeper. The city also asked, could this line go this way down towards the basketball court and across? And that was deemed not feasible because of a couple things, or not advisable. One, this relocation of this line is subject to Federal Highway Administration funding. And Eversource pays 50% of this relocation, and the DOT through the Federal Highway Administration pays for the other 50% of this line relocation. Adverse impact on parklands do not pass the 4F test for federal funding. That's one issue. The second would be that this would put, locating the lines underground here would put a huge encumbrance on Betts Park, decreasing its availability for future expansion and development on the land side. And further, when it landed on the Water Street side of the property, it would render one of the parcels completely not developable because it couldn't land on the property line again. So, as John alluded to, this issue's been before the city since 2016 in some shape or form. I know you all have had numerous emails come to your boxes over the summer months with different concerns about this project. Eversource has an obligation to move off the high towers and energize the new lines by 2020. All the permitting needs to be in place by 2019 to meet that schedule, and the Army Corps has the longest lead time to meet that schedule. It's really 12 to 18 months. So we're past the 18-month point at this permit has gotten in 12 months. The Army Corps of Engineer permit only is required for the river bottom crossing. That's it. And if not approved, Eversource will have to submit an alternative to the Connecticut Siting Council to meet the deadline to relocate off the high towers and energize the lines. And just for point of reference, what that would look like, this is Water Street looking back to Betts Park today. This is what the high towers would look like if they were up from the 25 Van Zandt property going over the river. These poles are 200 feet high. The bases are 10 to 12 feet wide. If there's a hybrid option to go underground to Betts Park, and if the desire is to go overhead from Betts Park, these are step-down poles because, as I explained before, like the Spinnaker property, you can't just step down off a 200-foot pole. You have to go down to a 100-foot pole and then go down below grade. So that's the view with it being underground from 25 Van Zandt, but overhead from Betts Park. Here's Betts Park looking back to Water Street. Here it is with the whole aerial option down to the police station. Here it is stepping down on 90 Water Street and going underground through Elizabeth. And here we are, this is looking somewhat by Liberty Square with the overhead option. And then this would be the step down option to go underground, Seaview to Van Zandt Street.
Thank you.
Do you want Eversource to come up and see any questions?
Would Eversource like to join?
I know some of the council people had questions of Eversource.
Mrs. Burns at the... I would anticipate a lot of questions.
I think the first question is for Mr. Livingston.
No, Mr. Cadiz has it.
Oh, Mr. Cadiz, I'm sorry.
Thank you. This is a very unique item for the council in a couple different ways. One being, for the first time in my years doing this, where the majority of the council, I believe everyone in the council and everyone that's spoken to this item from the public agrees that underground is better than above ground. And another way this is unique is that we're not voting on what we're usually used to voting on, which is a contractual agreement where it's brought to us and we have the option of of modifying the language to best suit the city and to have its best interest in mind. This, as you said, Ms. Burns, this is a letter of no objection that we're basically allowing, the mayor to send up. That being said, there are some questions, and I'm going to just touch on what majority of this council's concerns are, and I know there are going to be other questions involving the environmental portion of this, but I'm going to touch on what a major concern of mine is, and I'm going to direct it, and I forgot your name, I'm sorry?
Evan Piacenti.
Pleasure. I'm going to direct this to you, Evan. The main question that keeps coming back, and we're getting conflicting information, and I'm hoping that you could clarify, and that question is, will this line, after installed, impede or limit the future modifications of our docks? So if you want to start there, that's, I think, a question that I think is on everyone's mind.
Be happy to speak to that. So, upon the installation of the cable currently proposed, the process for a new project coming to fruition would be similar to how we would react to a utility coordination in a city street. So if we, our assets are now, underneath the dock, and we would take a look at the proposed project by whatever entities bringing that project forth. And our main interest would be to make sure that that project could be executed safely and reliably, making sure that the lights stay on and there's no risk to our cables. And with that said, there is no mandatory offset beneath the river.
Close to the microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. There's no mandatory offset in the river. So therefore, the notion that you have to be a certain number of foot or Eversource owns the river or owns the area is not true. A project could be executed there, perhaps similar to the project that's there now. But we can't, it would be irresponsible for Eversource to say with 100% certainty that anything could be built, only because the last thing we'd ever want is someone to jeopardize the assets, the cables themselves. But we absolutely would and do very frequently work with entities where we have made commitments, whether currently or in the past, to execute upon projects that may or may not impact our cables. So it's not uncommon for us.
So Evan, to follow up on that, so to clarify, you're saying that seeing that the depth that will exceed the proposed future pilings, I know there's some consideration if we were to need to go deeper for larger vessels, but our current needs, so you're saying a piling can be installed anywhere in that location, either it be above, to the right, to the left of the wire, without the need, well, first, with not needing Eversource's permission, and second, that it is possible?
It's definitely not by any means of permission, right? We don't have we don't own the land, so it's not a permission. It's a matter of coordination. And we want to make sure that, whoever goes to do the installation is safe. We want to make sure we have the most up-to-date as-built and that they're not going to risk them or their contractors hitting something beneath the river. So that's why that coordination is important. No different than when we're putting, a conductor in the street. We don't want to hit a gas main. We're doing tons of work right now doing subsurface exploration and looking at GIS maps and making sure that Eversource itself and its contractors are not at risk. So it really would be a similar process to that.
Okay, I want to say, like I said before, this is a unique situation, and we appreciate your patience with us. Because like I had said before, this is usually where we're tasked with modifying agreements, and this is one of those cases we really can't. So we're trying to do our legwork and our due diligence to make sure that our docks and any future modifications we're capable of making those modifications moving forward. So from what I've summarized, or from what you have said, that this wire will not restrict any future modifications of our docks. It's more of a crawl before you dig scenario.
Correct. Safety, reliability is the main priority.
Okay. Without the need of approval, let's say. Because there was some confusion at one meeting that took place, I believe, last month, and there's been some emails going back and forth that somehow we needed your approval to modify our docks in the future, and you're saying that is not the case.
Correct.
Okay. All right, I may come back, but I know others have questions, so I'll pass it on to someone else.
Mr. Livingston.
Yeah, if I could. So, listening to all the comments we've received, there seem to be two big issues, and I know what they are. One is the environment, is one that Mr. Cuddy's has just been talking about the use of the dock. So, let me start with that one if I could. You just mentioned right there commitments that you guys are willing to make. Did I hear you correctly? You said you can make commitments, you've made commitments in the past?
So it would be, when I said commitments, I really mean if it was knowing that the Harbor Commission and the harbor is there, knowing that our cables are also there, we have Eversource has a very robust commitment tracking system that we would use to then say, okay, we know that, that there's, we want to make sure that we're very accurate with our as-built. We want to make sure that we know, who's responsible for that area, and that the expectation lives on beyond my career and several others, and even perhaps beyond Eversource. And that commitment to work with whatever entity on dock expansion projects would live on, beyond Eversource or beyond me, for sure.
So, I'm not trying to be difficult, but you say commitment, is that something you guys give in writing, or how do you do that normally?
Usually it can be attached to an easement. A lot of times we track it by way of an easement, so it could be something tied to the easement that we would need for Veterans Park, in the Veterans Park area.
If you can hold just on that subject, the Veterans Park, I know you're going to be going underground there. How is the city restricted on its use of the property on ground, on Veterans Park itself? I know you have the, for lack of a better term, basin or whatever it is, that one area you have to get access, but is it, I know the line will go up along the road. Are we prohibited as to what we can do on top of that?
So, similarly, from a safety and reliability perspective, there would be things that you couldn't do. There'd be some limitations, hence the reason why we tried to route that cable as far north and as far along the street as we possibly can to try to limit that exposure.
When you say things we couldn't do, what types of things? I understand we're talking about parking lot, at least if I'm correct.
It's the same, it'd be the same thing like on the 70-90 side. We're trying to hug that property line so that those two properties could be developed with buildings on top. So I think in the letter that Eversource provided to the council members through Mario, it talks about how often would Eversource need to get into those vaults. There'll be two vaults.
Right.
And there's vaults all over the place.
Well, excuse me if I could, just because on that point, it does talk about the access to the vault, but it also talks about the permanent occupation. It's 15,000 square feet, area includes 30 feet wide of river's edge to 55 feet, and that seems like a big space.
It's just physically where those lines are.
And my question is, does it preclude us from doing anything on that park, on that space? I mean, that we would, it's a park, right? I mean,
it hugs, it hugs.
Still 55 feet wide at one point, right?
Between the two actual pipes and the jacking or the directional drilling launching pits, yes. But could you park on top of it? Sure. The access that Eversource would need would be once every 5 years approximately to get into those vaults to do an inspection. And these lines are expected to last 40 plus years.
Yeah,
so just like the restriction would be in the water, you just don't want to put anything. It would be a call before you dig kind of situation. Okay. You wouldn't want to put anything in there that would drill those.
So we can still
lines.
use it as parkland subject to.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And Eversource will be reimbursing the city for the acquisition of that parcel.
Okay. Thank you.
The city's granting the easement to Eversource.
All right. Let me just quickly. I know that people have questions. So just quickly on the environmental side, appreciate the letter we got. Maybe it wasn't from you, but whoever it was from. By us saying that we have no objection, are we giving up any sort of rights, or are we somehow cutting short any sort of environmental review? I mean, and by that I specifically mean there's something about a declaratory ruling.
I could respond. I think the answer is no to that. I mean, with regard to the declaratory ruling, I believe you're referring to the proceedings before the Connecticut Siting Council, and there's a process which, and correct me if I'm wrong, which Eversource has to go through before the Connecticut Siting Council. Having been on both sides of Siting Council proceedings, there's an opportunity for the municipality as well as interested, not only residents of the city, but anybody interested in anyone who has any environmental considerations, whether it be under an intervention pursuant to Connecticut General Statute 22A19, or just to participate as an intervener within those proceedings, or just to I guess, comment during the proceedings as an interested member of the public. There's certainly the opportunity during the Siting Council proceedings, and in my experience with the Siting Council, I think there is an effort to push the proposers of whether it be a cellular facility or a transmission line such as this, to consider alternate routes if they're available and they make more sense based on information and documentation that's provided during the proceeding. That's been generally my experience, and the benefit of the Connecticut Siting Council is that they're a state administrative agency that was created for the purpose of being able to have an expertise in evaluating these types of applications, and they got people professionals on board to review these types of applications and take into consideration the environmental issues as well as other issues such as site vistas and impacts on surrounding neighborhoods, et cetera. So, I mean, that whole process by sending this letter with a no objection at this point, my understanding is it just allows everybody to take the next step here, but that the city isn't giving up any of its rights to participate in the Siting Council proceeding, or I believe in the future DEP proceedings that will take place. I believe there's 2 different permits that they need, correct?
Correct, yeah, I would agree with everything you said.
And so just to summarize, there will be a full environmental review with input from interested parties.
Absolutely.
And there's a really good memo from Sue Prosy.
Yeah, no, I saw that.
Yeah, which I think does a really, really good job of outlining all the considerations that would be made by DEP and the Connecticut Siting Council, so you could get an understanding of what issues are going to be considered. I mean, there's a lot more procedural hurdles, I should say, in order to get this approved. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely. Multiple opportunities for consultation and further discussion.
And just my last comment was, since you mentioned commitments on the easement, if we're giving an easement, I'd like to ask that we get those commitments. And I think she said you'd be willing to do it, I assume. Are we ever having an easement, Lisa, you said on the...
Right.
Yeah.
Several easements will be coming before the council through Public Works Committee. There's an easement that needs to be taken through the police station. Each one of them will have to look at what type of notes we want to have as part of that valuation and the easement granting.
I'm just following up on Evan's comment about they've given commitments before.
Right.
And I'd like to see that here as well. And that's...
I think Mr. Corsella's next.
This wasn't my original question, but if I understood you correctly, or the dialogue...
Into the mic, please. Into the mic.
The dialogue you had with Mr. Nicola. That's the problem when you have a vacancy next to you. Am I to understand that if there's a letter from the city indicating it's been vetted, we vetted this project and there's no adverse impact, isn't that going to be presented to the Siting Council and to any other parties to show the city's position, and wouldn't that prejudice us in the future to take any other position?
I believe the letter requested today is more of a letter of no objection and not anything more than that.
I don't see an issue. I'm not concerned if we determine at a later time that we have a concern about the project as proposed with regard to us objecting with the Siting Council. I'm more than happy to give a call over to the Siting Council as well. I know the executive director pretty well and others there, so I could double check that, but I'm fairly confident that won't be an issue.
And again, we're not trying to be difficult. This is pretty important, and as Mr. Keidy said, this is not the type of issue that typically comes before us. But we really value our vibrant recreational boating activities and likewise our shellfish industry, and they both stand to potentially be impacted by this, and we want to be careful, and it's not an area where we deal with every day. Getting back to Mr. Keidy's question, he asked, would it affect the ability to maintain or alter the public docks? And you were very candid. You said you couldn't really give a determination. If I understood your answer correctly, you really couldn't give an opinion on that because you'd have to see each individual project. Is that fair to say that's what your answer was?
Correct. We couldn't state with 100% certainty that you could build exactly a project, any project. Now, with that said, I'm extremely confident that we could modify, make minor adjustments to a dock project or something else to where we could execute, in accordance with the ultimate goal of the project.
And I concur with Evan. I mean, working around utilities is something that is done all the time. To have a site that has no utilities or other encumbrances on it for development purposes is extremely rare in an urban environment like Norwalk. So in this particular case, the docks don't have anything there. But when we do any project within the city, we're always relocating utilities or working around utilities that can't be relocated. We work around the I guess it's the Eversource, 345 kV vaults down Connecticut Avenue. We need to bring development in. We need to bring Lowe's in. Those things are there. They're not preventing that from getting built. They're big things to get around, but there's a way to always get it done. There's always a solution.
Yes, I understand that. I think the question was, would it change our current ability to modify or maintain or expand our docks? And the question is, it depends. Certainly, the ability we have now is totally unfettered, and that wouldn't be the case after these lines were put in as proposed. Is that true?
I would say it would be a very minor issue to work around compared to other areas within the city which have way more encumbrances and things that are in the way of building something. So I'll give you an example. The IMAX Aquarium. The IMAX is getting knocked down. The new IMAX theater, 4D theater, is being built over a 54-inch sanitary sewer that carries half of the city's sewage. Okay? And they're driving 300 piles around that. So to me, that's a way more complicated project than the visitor docks is.
A member of the public, actually I was present at the meeting in July between representatives of Eversource and various interested parties from the city, and I thought it was a very productive meeting, and I do recall there was it sort of ended with an understanding that the Harbor Management Commission and representatives of Eversource were going to meet to see if some accommodations could be made. And then I heard tonight that the meeting never took place. Did the meeting ever take place? Do you know?
No, sir.
And why is that, if you know that?
Eversource wanted to prepare our revisions to, as you can see, some of the documents were presented here today. We wanted to prepare revisions to our engineering design, make sure that they were completed, and then we would submit formally through the Deep OLIS consultation process. So all the documents for the updated design would have been sent to several different commissions for review, and we didn't want to prematurely have that discussion until those were out on the street for review.
Thank you. I have nothing further right now.
Mr. Igneri.
Many of the council people, when we were talking about this project, we're talking about the wires going under the piling. Earlier when we talked, you said it's not going under the piling, it's going alongside the piling.
Correct.
So if you can explain that in a little more detail. And I guess my question is, with that piling only down 8 feet, if they were going to expect more torque on the docks and they wanted to put the pilings down more, can they go down another 2, 3 feet, 4 feet if necessary?
Sure. I think it'd be helpful if Lisa brought up the cross-section to speak to this, so hopefully we can make that work. If not, I'm sure I can.
I just wanted to clarify that you're not under the pilings.
There we go.
The mouse works if you want.
So as you mentioned and as we discussed earlier, the previous design routed the cable somewhere in this vicinity, and the revision now creates what I would call a bigger belly, and as opposed to the cable kind of going down quickly and then coming back up, it goes down at a very extreme angle, the most extreme angle we can accommodate, as well as, and it flattens out at the bottom of the river just above bedrock, and then takes a very hard 15-degree angle back up into Veterans Park. So by doing such, we're able to get those cables as low as we possibly can. As you can see here, as we kind of show, it's about 8 feet, down, from this pier. And all of these pilings, the data was received from Race Engineering. These are as-built. These aren't estimates. As well as, a total of about 11 feet away. So to your point with regards to driving a pile down, I'm not the engineer for this project, but I wouldn't see any major issues with driving. And maybe, Chris, if you have any major issues.
No, again, if you're driving it down another 3 or 4 feet, again, you, based off of this clearance here, you'd still be at the bottom of that piling above where the cables are, where the pipes are. Okay, so any sort of lateral pressure that may be imposed by that piling into the soil is going to be above where the pipes are, so it's not going to impart a tremendous amount of pressure on these conduits.
Mr. Hempstead.
Since you're on that, I have a couple of questions. Since you're on that question, suppose you had to go down the 8 feet. Any issues? Same pile that's there now. Suppose you had to go down additional 8 feet. Or 10
So you had to essentially remove this pile and then drive it down kind of between them?
That snaps, it breaks off, winter conditions, both sides of it.
Again, you would still be taking a look at a horizontal separation that relieves some of that localized soil pressure, right? It's kind of like having a spoon in pudding, right? When you move that spoon, the pudding kind of piles up right in front of the spoon, but on the other side of the bowl, it just hasn't moved all that much. So we're kind of on the other side of that bowl. You can kind of think of it that way.
I got that part, but I think what we're trying to get to, if it had to go down further for whatever reasons, would that be prohibited?
Not prohibited. I mean, you'd want to take a look at soil pressure, sure.
Okay.
But
Is there a way of mitigating that?
Yeah, there's a number of ways you could conceivably mitigate that. Number one, if you actually get down to the bedrock and actually drive the pile into the bedrock, well, all the lateral pressure is now going to be embedded into the bedrock, and very little of it is going to be in the new loose soil above the bedrock.
Can you use helical piles with that?
Which type?
Helical piles, I'll probably not pronounce it.
Micropiles.
Yeah, sorry.
Yes, conceivably you could do that, yes.
That relieves some, okay.
Yep.
Your letter dated October 4th from you. Would you be willing to put that into a letter memorandum? Or understanding, you call it what you want to call it?
Memorandum of understandings, I think we were asking for, right?
Yes, so that.
Or memorandum of agreement.
There's an agreement with them that what you stated in here, but I think that takes away a lot of the other factors that are haunting us out there right now. That you're basically saying, hey, you technically have no rights, all right, because this is open waters. Obviously, we don't want to electrocute, take power out, we're not dumb. But at the same point, we want to be able, the options, we need to move piles at different left, right, up and down on this part of the cabling. You're basically saying it's in consultation with, but you don't have a veto power.
Unfortunately, I don't know if I have the ability to make that ultimate decision, but I don't think it's unreasonable. So I'd be happy to take that back to Eversource Management and discuss that, but I don't think it's unreasonable.
Or maybe somebody could just, or maybe someone.
I may offer that as a condition under a B, not underneath the additional.
This is a public space and way. That's why we have, as part of our franchise rights, we can be in a public space and way, but we can't, have, basically ultimate authority, just like being in the street, right? It's public space and way, so it's part of our franchise rights. So, again, it's one of those things that it's like a CBYD. You want to make sure that you're thinking about that because nobody wants to dig into power cables, and that's it.
On the vaults, I'm assuming you're getting a permanent easement as a right-of-way for the vaults. That's how that's going to work. You're right, you can park on them, you can't build on them. You got to keep the manhole covers free from any obstructions. Will there be any restrictions about plantings as part of your program with this? Are you going to be allowed to do any plantings there if we wanted to?
Absolutely, yeah. And we're coordinating with the DPW on the improvement plan, and we plan to execute plantings and rerouting of the entrance to the park in accordance with it. Is it the 30-year plan?
The Vets Park.
Vets Park Master Plan. So yes, absolutely, there will be plantings, there will be screening, and
the reality, a separate issue, the reality point, I'll just move to the mayor, because the mayor and I are a little older time no walkers. The original bridge, in other words, there's no going south when they got to replace that bridge. The only option is going to be going back north where the bridge used to be. Where you see Constitution Park, what some of us call Tasty Freeze Park, where the boats go out for the seaport and the Maritime Center. That's where the bridge used to end. they built this bridge alongside it at the time, tore down the stores that were in the center there. It was actually a triangular piece. So reality is this bridge itself will never move further south, because then you're taking buildings, all right, on the other side, some sort of building. So I don't think it's personally a bad place to put it. I think the methodology you're doing it, and you're doing the core borings all the way through was it going down?
That'll be an open trench with a duck bank down the streets, and the horizontal directional drill is only used for the river crossing.
So, but you're not trenching. Or are you going to be trenching?
Not in the river. We are trenching.
We'll
the
run into
streets.
some issues. I'm just telling you, because I was on the Public Works meetings in the 80s when they dug up where Petco used to be. So you will find things in that road, because we've done things in the road. But that's just an FYI. It's going to happen one way or the other.
Mr. Hempstead, into the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's going to happen one way or the other. So that's a reality check, whether you take it further south or north. That's probably all mitigated by now anyhow. I've got a question about conflicts when we have two commissions that are in opposition to what this body's doing, even though when I read the requirements on the permitting process, those two commissions are brought as in consultation, which means they don't have the ability to really say, I guess they can say no, but to say no means nothing. And we can say no a lot of stuff too, and the citing council will tell, well, too bad. Yes. Can you what happened in a scenario like that? Because right now, these two commissions, I'm sure we'll submitting a letter, and I don't take anything away from them. God bless them, because this harbor has improved itself so greatly in the last 40, 50 years. Without the hard work of those people, and sometimes being a little bit of a pain, rightfully so, and questioning things, we wouldn't be where we are today with our harbor, and wouldn't have the thriving oyster industry that we have. But in the same token, what happens here? We send this into the city, and they send in 2 letters of objections. Is there?
My experience, you're referring to, for example, to like the citing council proceeding, the DEP proceeding, is that what you're referring to?
Yes, I think they have 180 days, and I'm not sure when the clock started.
There's opportunities to object, there's opportunities, or more importantly, there's opportunities to provide testimony, whether it be in person or written submissions during the proceedings. My understanding is the citing council is fairly adept at reviewing these applications involving lines going under the water. I think they've done it many times before. Last time I had a major proceeding up there myself over a year ago, I remember they were telling me during breaks that they were working on a huge submission across the sound for wires underneath. Actually, it's probably a couple of years ago now. So I know the citing council is well versed in the issues that one would consider for this type of an application. Is that a fair statement based on your experience?
Absolutely, yes.
And they've been dealing with this issue now for a while. I think the big line that went through, I don't remember if that ever got approved or not, that went through the sound, I know was a number of years.
I believe that's what they call the LERC project, right?
That was the Long Island replacement cable project, yes.
I know that was up there for a long time. So yeah, there's an opportunity for the Harbor Commission to provide testimony, and if they do so in person, my understanding would be that the citing council may even ask questions of them at those proceedings. By the way, you had mentioned a memorandum of understanding. I assume equally acceptable to you would be like an affidavit. There's something where they would where you're asking the company essentially testify or affirm in some sort of legal document the statements that were made in that letter that you're referring to, correct?
What I would be looking to is almost like a side agreement, that the city's agreeing with them, that we're taking, here's where I thought we go as a item 4B, that we take the letter in as part of the documentation for tonight that they provided on October 4th, and then the city enters some letter of agreement based on this letter that basically gives us the kind of make sure our rights are assured, that we can do what we've done as long as we don't endanger,
But I would suggest
the public or endanger.
My understanding was you were trying to get them to affirm what's in that letter in a legal document. If that's the case,
you legally you can figure
I think
out
it may
any
be
way you
used.
think best.
What I'm just
to
saying is,
serve
we're going to make a condition. My suggestion would be give us the option of an affidavit of Eversource producing an affidavit. I think that's just as effective. I think it's easier from a process standpoint if they provide an affidavit attesting to what's in the letter. That affidavit that could then, for example, be submitted into later proceedings, whether it be the DEP proceedings or the citing council proceedings, as essentially an attested statement by Eversource. So that would be my suggestion, is an affidavit. I think it's easier, because otherwise an agreement may have to come back here, and I just think it's, from a process standpoint, too time-consuming, potentially cumbersome from a process standpoint. I'd suggest an affidavit.
In reading the letter from Sue Posey, I am convinced, and maybe they don't pay attention to it, but I'm convinced there's certainly a heck of a lot of environmental reports that got to be provided to more than one agency inside the state of Connecticut and the feds, as far as environmental impacts, environmental reports that should either collaborate what they say or dispute what they say, but one way or the other is going to confirm whether we're doing any harm or not to the harbor. I'm certainly that this, compared to what they're going to do with the bridge, is fairly insignificant when you look at the impact on the harbor. So with that, I'd just like to offer an amendment and call it 4B on this, that a letter of understanding, you want to call it? A letter of
Affidavit.
An affidavit?
An affidavit from
understanding, be drafted by the law department, to be signed by the mayor, that, and Eversource, reflecting the comments in the October 5th, 2018, October 4th, excuse me, October 4th, 2018 letter from Eversource.
Someone hit your cable.
Hey,
I kind of liked it that way.
I like it that way.
Excuse me. Doug?
Okay, maybe not that way.
Doug, can I suggest?
The other one.
Doug, can I suggest this is easier? An affidavit approved and formed by the law department, just executed by Eversource. I think that's more effective for what you're trying to do, rather than have.
but it will require
Why don't you just have,
two signatures on it, right?
I would, no, just have it come from Eversource, so it's their document, their affidavit. That's my suggestion.
All right,
The
so-
mayor's not, with all due respect to the mayor, he's not affirming anything.
4B will be that
That doesn't make any sense.
letter gets entered into our records as being part of it, an affidavit,
An affidavit in a form acceptable to the law
Right.
department. I know what you're
an
trying to.
agreement with the Eversource, all right, be part of our approval process.
So an affidavit essentially that they execute in a form acceptable to the law department, I'll review with the council, quite frankly. Just-
Whatever,
Yeah,
whatever satisfies what we're trying to do is protect our documents.
that's a
Whatever
suggestion,
works.
the affidavit, if that's okay.
And I would like to make a comment mainly for my edification, because it's my signature that's going to go on any letter they authorize. Could you go back to the rendering of where this is going to go by the docks? Right there. Right. It's my understanding that the docks now go out into the channel as far as they are allowed to go. Is that correct? They can't go any further out into the channel. Harbor management?
The channel's further to closer to the west bank. I don't know if...
Oh, wait, is a channel on here?
The
You can see the channel.
the docks right now
Sorry.
go into the channel
Here.
as far as they're allowed to?
And the channel's right, Sue?
Mr.
Blue
Lowe?
lines, I think, are the channel. Yeah, the channel.
Right.
These two blue lines are the channel. So, yeah, in
Okay,
essence,
okay.
they're as far as the
So we're talking about modification to the dock, which would probably be on the north side, one extension, one finger, one whatever. Mr. Pinto? Dr. Pinto?
We plan to extend in that direction.
Right. So there would be one or two pilings that would have to be placed in order to have that happening. So really, the main thing we're talking about right here, for modification of the existing dock on the north side of the protrusion, I guess,
Could you point to that?
would be one finger out there with maybe two pilings.
The issue, and that was brought up in the July meeting.
Right. So what I'm saying is this is what the issue is right now, the concern. And so it doesn't seem to be, in my opinion, and I'll ask anybody else to comment, that one extension off that northern section would be such a major issue that it would be precluded from happening, or that it would cause serious problems for anybody wanting to do that. And that's basically what we're talking about. We're not talking about a huge modification to the dock. We're talking about one extension to the point, show me where, yes, one extension there.
That was not part of the Betts Park master plan, so that was very new information that was received.
Right, but even if they did want to do it, because master plans, as we know,
Dredge here, and there's an impact of, there's a tidal wetland,
right,
regulated tidal wetland there, so that would even be difficult to get permitted just to do that part as well.
right, so a significant modification of the dock in that area would be challenging to say the least, but certainly would not be a problem if they needed to drive one or two pilings in that area.
Right, I think the bigger challenge would be getting over the dredging and the environment.
And they can't extend out into the channel any further.
Right, which are the blue lines, if you can, they're a little.
So I wanted to kind of put that in perspective, that the whole issue is one extension off that dock, kind of east of the one extension that's already there. Yeah, that was my question.
I mean, again, so it would be just a case of identifying where the cables are in that location and selecting the piling location with that in mind.
Yeah, it's not like there's a whole modification of the docks that we would be wanting to do. It would be pretty much just one extension. Okay. Mr. Cuddies.
There's a scenario that's been discussed, and I wanted to just get the input of the gentleman from Eversource. I'm not too familiar with underground drilling, but Ms. Burns has said that there's been some ground testing to this point, and you have kind of an understanding of what's going on down there. And there was a scenario that's been discussed, like I said, where perhaps when you're drilling, that you may run into ledge, you may run into some scenario where you can't go to the depth that you've planned to go to. I forget the amount. Is that something that you see as a possibility during the installation process of this wire?
I would say that is a very small possibility because of the amount of borings that have been done.
Okay.
So along that path, we've gotten borings and we've gotten basically bathymetric surveys so that we know what that subsurface looks like, and we know where the various layers and what soil types exist in these various layers.
So the scenario of you coming across, going over Water Street, starting from that and then getting to the docks and saying, wow, we hit the edge, we've got to raise this to, up 10 feet and we've got to modify your docks. That's a scenario you see to be impossible or very highly unlikely?
I would say highly unlikely.
Okay.
And we've done a tremendous amount of subsurface investigation there to validate what exists, and not just where the bottom of the channel is, but what types of soil there and how thick are those various layers of soil.
Got it. Okay. That's comforting. And just real quick there, you mentioned that this is going to pitch up at 15 degrees. How close to shore will that pitch start? Are we talking?
I think actually, they may have been, no, I think in the area. Yeah. I think they may have actually had.
10, 15, you said right there. You said 10, 15.
Here is the setup of the launching pits. Okay, so I realize I stepped away from the microphone, but I just wanted to kind of. There we are. Hey, take advantage of technology. So again, you have your pits here that you would set up, located basically here and here, and that's where you would have your pit set up, and that's where you would set up to do the dive, and you would pull your pipe back.
So from point A to point B, it's going to be at a consistent depth for that entire length?
No. This is kind of a profile. So this is like taking a slice of bread of the river here, and this is the path where we would dive down, curve back up. Okay.
To give you some reference, I believe this is the piling location. So this is the existing dock, to give you kind of a frame of reference on where we are.
That's the closest pile location to the.
Yep.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
And then over on this area here, this is, even though this is the pit,
where in this case, it's exiting from, the actual pipe's going to continue at this depth with the open cut.
So the red line
So
signifies
it's
the
about
wire.
8 feet deep.
Well, yes, the red band is the location.
So there's so distance between that piling and where it starts to elevate.
Ascend.
You're going to make me squint and look at the screen really closely. You'll have to forgive me. I mean, I believe each of these ticks are 25 feet, so about 75 feet before it really starts to come up.
Okay, so that's a significant distance.
Keep in mind, the channel bottom is here, so from a dredging perspective, I have no conceptual idea of what would need to be done there, but, if you look logically, there's room there.
There's material.
I'm sorry, Mayor, go ahead.
Ms. Smith?
Yeah, can you please explain the actual drilling process of going under the river? And what is the chance that there could be any disturbance of the soil that might affect that, in particular, that one piling? Thank you. Yeah, that one piling that it's so close to.
Okay, so what happens when you're doing a horizontal directional drill is you're starting from the launching pit, which you would start on the west side. You would basically have a pilot drill that would drill along the prescribed path. Okay, and then as you come out the other side, that's when you would pull back with a reamer. You may pull the pipes back in one fell swoop, you may not. It's maybe a little too early to decide that, but you would pull back, and as you're doing that, you're pulling in basically a mud to keep the hole filled, so you don't have this big cavity underneath the river. And then you pull the pipe. Basically you have that device, and you pull the pipe underneath, back out to the other side.
So there's no real threat to that piling?
I don't believe so, no.
Mr. Livingston.
I just want to comment on Mr. Hempstead's proposed amendment, and I don't object to it at all. My one thought is, and it's consistent with what I said earlier on, this seems to deal with under the river. It doesn't deal with on the land. And what I'd like to do is, amend your amendment, if you will. We talked about the commitment we'd get from them as to being able to do, I'm not sure what the word is, we didn't talk about specific language, but we talked about you're giving us a commitment and easement on that property to basically to do what we're doing, subject to your, and I'm sort of making this up, but I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think you said that other than the vault, you did not expect that your the easement on the parkland itself would interfere with our use of it as a park. Is that correct?
I think you're right on, Tom. This particular motion that's before the Common Council tonight is only for the river crossing, not the land part. So Eversource will be back with the proposed easements. And so this is just the river crossing, not the land side.
So we'll have another opportunity to.
Right.
We regularly negotiate easement language, whether it be with Eversource or whether it be with DOT.
So, Mr. Hempstead, if you would like to propose that amendment, could you
I kind of did.
give us the language?
4B.
You did.
I'd like, for the edification of the council, I'd like to.
For the Corporation Council draft an affidavit with Eversource and the City of Norwalk.
Just with Eversource to execute. We just want Eversource to execute it, not the city.
Concerning the ability for the City of Norwalk to either replace, repair, or put any future pilings or dock work in that particular area without jeopardizing the safety of either the installers or the citizens of Norwalk. And you can draft it. You can draft it any way you want. I'm trying to give you some parameters that the intent is, I should do that, an affidavit that allows the city to do what it needs to do to maintain its dock, expand its docks, repair its docks. Is it like that? I think I'm trying to overcomplicate.
Just so I understand it, my understanding was that you wanted to essentially get them to attest to the representations made in the October 4th
Thank you.
letter.
That'll do it.
So what I was going to do is to draft an affidavit that essentially gets Eversource to execute under oath an affidavit which confirms the representations made in the October 4th letter. Is that acceptable?
That
I
is
think that's what you're trying to,
Because
okay.
what I said first, I wanted this
That's what you-
letter to become part of the record.
So therefore, we'll do it by way of an affidavit, and this way it could be submitted in future state proceedings, and we have an affidavit which is better than a letter.
How's this motion going to read?
Well, that's what we're going to do. It would say,
Wait, Mr.
it would read like it is, and then say, subject to an affidavit drafted by the law department attesting to the representations in the October 4th, 2018 from Eversource.
Okay.
Wait, but
So we need
Ms.
to
Melendez.
approve the amendment. Go ahead.
I think we all want to know what we're voting on. Mr. Hempstead, I think you said you would want to make it 4B, so
4B.
you don't want it to be attached to
No,
4,
because
the end
I
of
think
4.
the resolution that we're putting forward is a standard state-issued kind of resolution, the way they want it.
Okay.
It's not, yeah.
So
I know the
he's
state usually
suggesting-
has these in a format that this is all they want. We've been through this enough times.
It's not a resolution.
Usually. If it's not, then that's...
It's not in the
It's not
format.
it's not in the format of a resolution.
So we can amend it any way we want?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
So basically, you're authorizing to send a letter on behalf of the city of Norwalk indicating no objection to Eversource's Army Corps of Engineers Section 408 permit application for relocation of their 115 kilovolt transmission lines under the Norwalk River related to the Walk Bridge replacement project number so-and-so, subject to an affidavit prepared by the law department attesting to the representations of the October 4th, 2018 letter from Eversource to the law department.
So moved.
All in favor?
Thanks, Mayor.
Any further discussion? Mr. Ioannidis.
Close enough. Yeah, one of those
So many
Greek last
Greeks. Sorry.
I have a couple questions here, but we just got a lot of information thrown at us within the last week. And I just want to make sure that, we're covering all of our bases. I know we have this deadline coming up. There's absolutely no way that that application process can be expedited.
We are not aware of any this time.
Anyways.
And actually, the application typically takes 12 to 18 months. So we're at this point at 12 months.
And one other main point or question that I wanted to ask. Have you guys been in any, so we talked about what types of projects you might have to refuse if they weren't going to damage your lines, et cetera. Have you been in discussion with either the Harbor Commission or anybody who might want to do something there and have an idea of something we might be doing in the near future?
I think other than what was discussed, kind of today, hypothetically, of putting the dock, kind of in that proximate location, that's all the awareness that we have. We did receive the VETS plan, master plan, 30-year plan, and that location in particular wasn't picked as a spot for expansion, but nevertheless, we are aware of that location, so.
I think, Mr. Ioannidis, that extension that I pointed out was really about the only thing that we could possibly do there in the near future that would have any close relationship to those lines.
And it didn't seem to raise any red flags or issues with you? You think you can work around it?
If that is the project proposed, I feel confident we could work with the entity to execute that project.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Mr. Burnett.
Yes, I did have a question related to the timeline. The application has to go in November 1st? Is that understood? Is that correct?
We have to start the process November 1st, correct?
To start the process November 1st.
Correct, yep.
And I only raised that issue because to get clarity on, is tonight's vote a go, no-go type of vote? We just received a letter from the Harbor Management Commission dated October 9th with 15 items of concern. Obviously, just getting it today didn't give us a lot of time to digest it. So my question is, do we have any wiggle room to possibly delay this decision until we could address this letter from the Harbor Commission and still have time to bring it back to the table for a vote to meet the November 1st application process start. I'm just trying to understand, is tonight a go, no-go vote?
Well, tonight would be a vote to authorize. That would be not a no, yeah, it would be a no-go or go vote for tonight.
But it's just a letter.
Just a letter saying no objection.
So at what point, if I can, at what point do we get to address the letter from the Harbor Management Commission, which we received today, October 9th?
Well, I think if you have any concerns by that letter, if you could address them right now and ask Eversource to answer the questions.
To that comment, as we kind of previously stated, there will be several different periods, as we kind of spoke about, and it's indicated in the letter from Ms. Brosi, where those types of issues could be brought to light, whether it be to DEEP, to the Army Corps, to the Connecticut Siting Council. So this isn't the only opportunity for discussion.
I mean, with all due respect to the council, you're probably not the best body to evaluate the issues raised by the Harbor Commission, and those issues probably should be raised, should be evaluated by by DEP and the Connecticut Siting Council during their proceedings. I mean, they've got the experts available to assist for example, the Siting Council with evaluating those issues. This legislative body of the council, with all due respect, we just don't have the area. That's not our area of expertise. So, really, this is a request for basically a letter from the city. It's like a check off on the box, that the city sent the letter saying no objection at this point. They move on. It's just a check on the box on one of the many boxes that they have to check in order to go forward with these applications. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's really just, it's more process over substance for whatever it's worth. And that would be the way I would look at it.
Mr. Ioannidis?
I think just following up with that was my third question. It's just kind of hard for me if all we're doing is voting on sending a letter of no objection to do so if we have multiple groups within the city who are objecting to it. That's the issue that I'm personally having.
Further discussion. So, Mr. Corsello.
One thing I will observe is that we're told that the process must be started by November 1st.
Mike.
The process should be started by November 1st. The first question is, can you start the process without the letter?
Unfortunately, I believe that is a critical path item to start the process. And our schedule is really driven not necessarily by Eversource's needs, but it's CDOT's need. And we've already been delayed, somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 months with some of the revisions that have been made to the design. And unfortunately, there's just no more float to be made up in the schedule. And we currently are at risk for our current schedule now. So I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. But I will observe that we do have another council meeting before the 1st of November. Thank you.
Further discussion. Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment as the item as amended by Mr. Hempstead, all in favor?
Just the amendment?
I think the amendment.
The issue as amended.
The amendment first.
The amendment by Mr. Hempstead first.
First, the amendment.
This is just the amendment.
Unanimous, all in favor, opposed? Now, the item as amended, all in favor? Okay, 1, 2, 3, let's do a roll call vote.
Mr. Burnett?
No.
Mr. Corsello?
I'm going to abstain.
Mr. Sacchinelli?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Stern?
Yes.
Ms. Melendez?
Yes.
Mr. Ioannidis?
No.
Mr. Sims?
No.
Mr. Kides?
Yes.
Mr. Hempstead?
Yes.
Mr. Sirenides?
Yes.
Mr. Igneri?
Yes.
Mr. Livingston?
Yes.
9, 3, and 1.
9, 3, and 1.
So we have 9 yes, 3 noes, and 1 abstention. The motion carries. Okay, next item on the agenda, Mr. Livingston, item 7G2.
Okay, I'd like to move this item. Item 7G2, authorize the Mayor Harry W. Rilling to execute an amendment to Construction Solutions Group LLC's contract for program management services for school construction projects to allocate portions of their fees as follows. New Columbus School and Ely site, $338,640, account noted. And Ponus Ridge School renovation and addition project, $338,640, account noted. Just some comments on that. Back in 2017, we approved the school facilities improvement plan, and as part of that, or consistent with that, we selected Construction Solutions Group as the program manager for the implementation of the plan. Essentially, more Allens to help us out here. What we're doing here, well, at the time when we executed the contract, we did not know how to allocate the specific fees to the projects. And now we do have a little more visibility into those projects. So what we're doing here is simply allocating the funds, these funds, to the two different sites so they can be reimbursed by the state. We are not spending any or additional money or signing any new agreements. This is just an allocation issue.
Okay, Mr. Livingston has moved the item. Discussion?
Well, I voted against this project then, and I'm gonna vote against it again now. I don't believe that this is the prudent thing to do, especially not having approval from DEEP to even move forward with this project. I think it's not, we're not being fiscally responsible by moving forward with allocating fundings for this site, and that will be my reason of voting against it tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Sims. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 11-1. Mr. Sims voting no.
Motion to adjourn.
Pardon me?
Motion to adjourn.
Wow. Motion to adjourn by Ms. Melendez. All in favor?
Harry.
We're adjourned. Thank you.